Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to be talking just a little bit more about what it was like being on the lot, the people that we ran into, the things that we're filming, all that sort of thing. So if you're enjoying these, please do like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll know when I'm posting a new one. I absolutely adore being on studio lots. I've had an opportunity to work on a lot of different studio lots over the years since I was a child. Just the magic, the history, I just feel it everywhere when I'm on the lot. And Warner Brothers has quite a history. It was my home for 10 years really, between 9 years of the series and then doing the initial reunion movies. And it was my playground as well as my place of work. And what's better than working someplace that is also a joy. We filmed on stage 26. Next to us when we were first filming was one of the sets of Bonanza. So they were on the sound stage next to us. Not that I particularly saw them or anything like that. In subsequent years, various different other shows came through there, including some sets and things that were shot for A Star is Born, one of the remakes with Chris Christopherson and Barbra Streisand. I did see Barbra Streisand, a huge fan of Barbra Streisand. I saw her one time and I was so tongue-tied that I really didn't even talk to her. But one of our studio teachers had worked with her on something and said that she was lovely and just really enjoyed working with her. So I was happy to hear that. I did get the opportunity every once in a while to go on to other sets that were filming or not filming at the time, but see some of those sets. Eight is Enough was also filmed by our parent company, Lorimar, so there were times when I would go over onto that set and I knew all of that cast and they were a lot of fun. We'd run into each other. Sometimes we'd do photo shoots together because the same company produced both shows. And then of course, Willie Ames, who was on Eight is Enough, had also done an episode of the Waltons, so he is another longtime friend, and I'll see if maybe I can get him to come do a video at some point. So always fun seeing that cast and going and hanging out on their set now and then. Another set that I had a chance to go on to at one point was All the President's Men. That was filming some of their interiors at Warner Brothers. And a costumer who had worked on the Waltons was doing costuming on that film. So she invited me over, and it was the set was inside the newspaper office for All the President's Men, and I could see across the way Robert Redford was talking with the director or something like that. So it was kind of being a bit of a fan, kind of going, oh, he's over there, huge fan of Robert Redford. So that was fun to go visit their set. Also at one point when Poseidon Adventure was filming, I went over onto that stage, and they weren't actually filming at that time, but it was so cool to go in and see. It was the upside down sets after the ship had inverted. And so to go onto that set and look around and see all of these upside down sets was kind of cool. So I always got a kick out of going and checking out other things that we're filming. On the back lot at times, we would share filming space. We might be at the house and somebody else might be at Drusilla's Pond. In fact, that was used frequently for Fantasy Island. So they would sometimes be shooting over there while we were shooting at the house. Dukes of Hazzard was quite frequently filming on the back lot, and their car, the General Lee, would be running around and they would drive through sometimes for fun. They'd drive through the front yard of the Waltons and that was always fun. And I knew that cast as well. John Schneider and Tom Wopat, Catherine Bach, Denver Pyle, so George Best had actually played my father in a very early TV episode that I did, Felony Squad. So it was fun to cross paths with them too. The Walton kids typically went to lunch together. That was sort of just a regular routine unless someone had some errand they had to go run. But occasionally we would go to the commissary on the lot. And so I would sometimes see various different stars that were on the lot working on different projects. I remember seeing Sally Fields one time, and I thought how tiny she was. It's like if she turned sideways, she almost disappeared. It is true that people tend to look bigger on screen. That the old it adds 20 pounds is not a myth. So, and I know I've had people say that to me, that I'm not that tall, I'm not that big. So it is the illusions of being on the screen. Other times when we weren't going to the commissary, we'd go off the lot. There were any number of restaurants nearby. The trick was that we only had an hour, so we had to get off the lot, drive where we were going, eat, pay, get back. So that was a little tricky. So we always kind of, sat down and went, I'm sorry, we only have an hour, so we're gonna have to work quick here. And we learned which places could accommodate that quick schedule. Typically we went in wardrobe, which early in the 70s was pretty funny because we'd walk in 1930s costumes and everybody else was in 70s wear. But we just bonded in that way. And it was kind of as if someone didn't want to go to lunch, it was like, what's the matter? Are you mad at us or something? So yeah, it was just part of our ritual and a great part of the bonding of our cast. I was so happy to work on a cast that had a lot of other young people. Recently when Radamus Pera talked about, he came in and did a video and he was talking about doing Kung Fu, and he was the only child on the show, so he didn't have any other young people to hang out with. So we knew we were lucky to have each other. So that made the experience so much better, to always have somebody your own age that you could relate to. Different people would sometimes come by the set. George Clooney came by and we were talking with him in the makeup trailer one time because Mary knew him and he was working on ER on the lot, so he came by. So it was fun to meet him. This was before he became the mega star that he is now, but he was still a pretty big deal even then, and awfully handsome. So it was fun to hang out and just even say hello and chat with him for a few minutes. George Kennedy dropped by the back lot one day when we were filming, and here's a shot with him and with Merv Adelson, one of our producers from Lorimar. I believe George Kennedy was on the lot filming Blue Night at that time. One of the other people who came by to visit the set one time was Elton John. This was during his, I believe, Yellow Brick Road tour, and he was in town and wanted to come by and meet the cast. It was such a thrill. He came into our schoolroom trailer on the back lot of the studio and sat in there for probably 20 minutes talking with us. And he was so lovely, and I was a huge fan, and he literally gave us all tickets to go see his concert. We all went. Ellen Corby went with us and thoroughly enjoyed the concert. So that's a memory that I will never forget, and I really appreciated that. Warner Brothers does a tour, and I always felt that if someone really wanted to see behind the scenes at a studio, that the Warner Brothers tour would give you more real inside information and also would take you onto working sets. They would literally come onto our working set and they would, stand and watch us film a scene for a few minutes at a time and then continue the tour. And as I was looking into what they do, I was reminded of Stage 16. Stage 16 on the Warner's lot is taller than any other soundstage, and they literally dug it down and can flood that. I was watching a video and they were talking about them filming The Perfect Storm, some of the water sequences in there. I mentioned Poseidon Adventure when I went onto that set. That was on Stage 16. I am going to put a link into the section below with a link to a video here on YouTube about Stage 16 that I recommend you take a look at. It talks about the history of it and shows you the stage and talks about some of the things that were filmed in there. So take a look at that, and if you get a chance to check out the Warner Brothers tour at some point, I recommend it. Here are a few shots of that castle that I talked about that I used to go hang out on the set. There's some shots here of it when it isn't dressed for filming, and then in use for the castle in Camelot in exterior scenes and also in sequences for Kung Fu. Then dressed up for Lost Horizon. Lost Horizon and Kung Fu, of course, were shot during the time we were on the lot at Warner Brothers, so I did get to see the set dressed up for both of these things, and always just a great set to go and visit. Now, I believe it's a parking lot. So there you are, a little bit more about my life over the years on the Warner Brothers lot. So I hope you've enjoyed this little behind the scenes of the Waltons and my playground. I will see you again for another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.